December 26th, 211 AD. A mother stands in her bedroom inside the Roman imperial palace. She has done something no mother should ever have to do. She has asked her two sons to finally make peace. One son enters the room, then soldiers enter behind him, and in the next 60 seconds, her other son dies bleeding in her arms. The man who ordered it? Her firstborn. His name was Caracalla, and what he did next was somehow worse. To understand what Caracalla became, you have to understand what he grew up inside. His father, Septimius Severus, was one of the greatest military emperors Rome had ever produced. He fought wars on 4 continents. He rebuilt Rome's army from the ground up. He was brilliant, ruthless, and almost never home. Caracalla, born Lucius Septimius Bassianus, was the eldest son. And from his earliest years, he carried something heavy: the weight of being the heir to the most powerful man on earth. But his father didn't just give him power, he split it. In 198 AD, Septimius named both his sons co-emperors. Caracalla was 10 years old. His brother Geta was 9. He didn't create 2 emperors. He created 2 enemies and gave them matching thrones. Right there, in that single decision, a rivalry was born that would end in blood. Think about what that does to a child. You are told you are special. Then you are told your brother is equally special. For the rest of your life, you share a throne, you share a palace, you share an empire, you share a name. But you cannot share power. Not really. Not when both of you want all of it. By the time they were adults, Caracalla and Geta had divided the imperial palace in half. Literally. They sealed the connecting doors. Each had his own staff, his own guards, his own court. 2 emperors, 1 building, 0 trust. Historians have long described Caracalla as paranoid, but paranoia doesn't come from nowhere. Caracalla had grown up watching his father reward strength. Septimius Severus didn't do warmth. He did campaigns. He did victories. He did power. There was one moment that tells you everything. Caracalla was 12 years old. He had spent 3 months training with the legions, harder than any boy his age, trying to earn something. He stood before his father after a military review. He waited for a word. Any word. Septimius looked him over, turned back to his generals, and kept talking. That silence lasted about 4 seconds. It lasted the rest of Caracalla's life. He walked back to the barracks alone, and he hit the training post until his hands bled. Not because he was angry, because it was the only thing that answered back. And Caracalla had spent his entire childhood trying to earn something his father was constitutionally incapable of giving: approval. When Septimius died in 211 AD, in Britain during a cold, failed campaign, his final words to his sons were not, "I love you," or "be kind to each other." He said, "Pay the soldiers, enrich the army, ignore everyone else." Those were the last words of a man who had spent 40 years choosing power over family. His sons had been watching. They had learned perfectly. By December of 211, the situation had become impossible. Caracalla had already tried to kill Geta once, during the festival of Saturnalia just days earlier. It had failed. So he tried something different, something colder. He asked their mother, Julia Domna, to arrange a peace meeting. Just the 2 brothers, alone, in her private apartments. No bodyguards, no armies, just family. Geta agreed. He trusted his mother. He walked into the room, and then the doors opened behind him. Centurions, soldiers loyal to Caracalla, entered the room with drawn blades. Geta ran to his mother. She threw her arms around him. She screamed for them to stop. They did not stop. Geta was stabbed to death in his mother's arms. On December 26th, 211 AD, he was 22 years old. Julia Domna, the Empress of Rome, was left holding her dead son, covered in his blood. And here is the cruelest part of all. She could not scream. She could not grieve. She could not even say his name out loud, because the man standing in the doorway was now the most dangerous person on earth. So she held her dead son in silence, and she looked at the face of the one who was still alive, and she said nothing. She would never say his name again, not because she forgot him, because she was not allowed to remember him out loud. Within hours of Geta's death, Caracalla walked to the Praetorian barracks. He stood before Rome's most elite soldiers and told them he had narrowly escaped assassination. He told them Geta had tried to kill him first. He told them he was the victim. Then he paid them, handsomely. It worked. Over the next weeks, an estimated 20,000 people were killed or arrested. Geta's friends, his advisors, his guards, his staff, anyone who had ever shown loyalty to the wrong brother. Gone. But Caracalla wasn't done. He ordered something Rome had used before, but never on this scale. A damnatio memoriae, the damnation of memory. Every coin with Geta's face was melted down, every statue pulled from its plinth and smashed, every painting altered or burned, every inscription chiseled from the stone until his name was nothing but a scar in the rock. It became a capital offense, punishable by death, to speak his brother's name out loud. Geta had existed. Now he would not. This is the act of a man not just seeking power. This is the act of a man who understood one terrifying truth, that his brother's memory alone was enough to unmake him. A ghost is more dangerous than a rival. A rival you can kill. A ghost lives in the minds of everyone who loved him. Caracalla didn't just murder his brother. He tried to murder the idea of him. That is not strength. That is the deepest kind of fear. (215 AD). 4 years after the murder, Caracalla had consolidated his grip on Rome. The empire was his, completely, undeniably his. No rival, no brother, no threat. And yet something inside him could not rest. He traveled to Alexandria, one of the greatest cities on earth, a city of scholars, philosophers, and artists, a city that had stood for 5 centuries. The people of Alexandria had made a mistake. They had written plays about him, satires, comedies. They mocked the man who killed his own brother and called it self-defense. They laughed. Now, here is the psychology of what happened next. Because this is not just cruelty. This is a specific, revealing kind of cruelty. Caracalla did not march in and punish them openly. He did not declare war on the city. He did not come as a conqueror. He came as a guest. If that sounds familiar, it should. It was the exact same method. Trust the invitation. Walk through the door. The trap was the welcome. He announced he wanted to honor the youth of Alexandria, to personally inspect and celebrate the finest young men the city had produced. They came willingly, thousands of them, proud, excited, unarmed. His soldiers surrounded the square, quietly, methodically, the way you seal a room before the doors close. And then the signal was given. The massacre lasted hours. An estimated 20,000 civilians were killed in a single afternoon. 20,000 people. Because they laughed at him. Think about that. He was the Emperor of Rome, the most powerful man alive. He commanded the greatest army on earth. And a playwright's jokes kept him up at night. That is not the behavior of a man who feels powerful. That is the behavior of a man who knows, somewhere he cannot admit, that the joke was true. That he was not a great emperor. That he was a frightened boy who had done something unforgivable and could never outrun it. Power had not healed him. It had just given him more ways to hurt people for reminding him of what he was.
217 AD. 6 years of absolute power. 6 years of fear dressed as strength. 6 years of trying to outrun a ghost he created himself. Caracalla is traveling through the Syrian desert. He stops on the side of the road to relieve himself. Think about that image for a moment. The man who had commanded armies across 4 continents. The man who had erased his brother from every coin, every stone, every painting in the empire. The man who had massacred 20,000 people because a playwright made him feel small. Standing alone on a dusty road, back turned, completely vulnerable. A soldier approaches from behind. His name is Julius Martialis. He was one of Caracalla's own guards. His brother had been executed on Caracalla's orders. He draws his blade. One strike. History does not give great men great deaths. It gives them the deaths they've earned. No ceremony, no final words, no last moment of imperial dignity. Caracalla, the man who had erased his brother from history, massacred 20,000 civilians and ruled the greatest empire on earth, dies alone, on a dusty road, mid-urination, killed by a man whose brother he had taken. The wound he gave others found its way back to him. The Senate declared a damnatio memoriae against him. The very erasure he had invented for Geta was now applied to him. History had not forgotten. History had simply waited. Caracalla was not born a monster. He was born a boy who needed his father's approval and never received it. A boy who was told he was special, then told to share. He spent his entire life trying to fill a hole that power could never fill. So he kept reaching for more power, more control, more silence, more erasure of anything that reminded him of what he lacked. His brother, his father's indifference, the laughter of a city. He erased all of it. And at the end, alone on a desert road, back turned, killed by a man with the same wound he carried, he had become the very thing his father's coldness had made him. A man who couldn't be loved, who couldn't allow anyone else to be loved either. The empire survived Caracalla, barely, but the family that built it was gone, destroyed from within by one of its own. This is what happens when a wound is handed the throne instead of healing. This is Empire Graveyard. Every empire falls. The only question is, what was broken long before the walls came down? Every emperor on this channel carried a wound. The next one carried something worse. He didn't erase his family. He became so paranoid he couldn't tell the difference between an enemy and a shadow. If you want to know what breaks an empire from the inside, subscribe. We're just getting started. And tell me below, do you think Caracalla was a monster or a product of what his father made him? The comments are going to be interesting.